Resilient Speaker Series as part of the Strong Brain Institute. My name is Wallace Dixon, and I am the founding director of the ETSU Ballot Health Strong Brain Institute. The majority of Americans have experienced at least one major adverse experience at some point in their childhood. 1 in 4 of our students at ETSU have lived through or may still be living through 3 or more major adverse experiences. The goal of the Strong Brain Institute is to use the science of childhood adversity coupled with mitigation science and resilience science to prevent and mitigate the negative impacts of ACEs on children's and adults' lives, and to promote awareness and the use of resilience-informed procedures and policies, both at ETSU and throughout the Appalachian Highlands region. We are a resource for people to turn to when they have questions about how best to employ resilience-informed strategies and practices in their workspaces. And today we have 2 excellent speakers, and I'm going to hand off to Michelle Moser, who's also a founding member of the Strong Brain Institute, for the introduction.
All right, well, welcome everyone. I'm really glad you're here. I am really honored to have the privilege of introducing 2 women I've had the opportunity to collaborate with over many years in their careers that put them at the forefront of promoting resilience and mitigating ACEs in Tennessee and the nation. Several of us in the SBI had the opportunity to hear a version of today's talk at the Association of Infant Mental Health in Tennessee's annual conference. Both Dr. Diana Moreland and I independently emailed the SBI with our excitement to bring Heather and Jen to speak for the Resilience Series. The SBI has had a group focused on reflective leadership in promoting trauma-informed and resiliency-informed cultures, and we're excited to learn from our speakers today. I'll introduce Heather Taylor Griffith and Jennifer Drake-Croft by reading their brief bio sketches, and then get ready for some inspiring ideas in their presentation: The Power of Belonging, the Role of Secure-Based Leadership in Organizational Health and Success. As y'all have been doing webinars for a long time, you use the chat function for comments, and you can feel free to introduce yourself to each other. You can ask questions, and Ben will help us monitor the chat. Heather Taylor Griffith is a consultant, speaker, and leadership development coach. Using a secure-based model as a foundation, she partners with individuals, teams, and organizations to reach their potential through finding a balance of psychological safety and reasonable risk-taking. A licensed clinical social worker, Heather spent over 15 years as a therapist and leader in children's mental health. She provided direct service in a variety of settings, including Vanderbilt Psychiatric Hospital. She developed evidence-based infant and early childhood treatment services in Tennessee as the clinical director with the Early Connections Network System of Care and program manager with Centerstone. At the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, Heather served first as the Regional Intervention Program Director and then the statewide director of the Office of Children, Young Adults, and Families. Her efforts were devoted to utilizing data-driven processes for program outcomes, fostering team development, and enhancing system collaboration. Across this diverse career, Heather began to see the connection between early childhood development, leadership growth, and organizational health. Leaders create a ripple effect across the organizations that directly impact people and outcomes. She is passionate about partnering with people-serving professionals and organizations so that they can align in their missions, maximize the talent of team members, and realize their potential as an organizational level. And I'll turn next to introducing Jennifer Drake-Croft, is the project director of the Infant and Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center at Georgetown University. Sitting on multiple state and national committees, Jennifer has helped lead and shape macro-level initiatives and policies to promote healthy child development, advance infant and early childhood mental health efforts, prevent ACEs, and support community resilience. Jennifer currently oversees the strategy and operations of the Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Technical Assistance Center, which supports 48 SAMHSA-funded grantees across the United States in their efforts to advance policies, programs, and practices for very young children. Jennifer was a founding member of All Children Excel, ACE Nashville, as many folks on this call probably know, a 400-member collective impact initiative seeking to reduce ACEs and promote resilience at the population level using a public health approach. And also familiar to many of you, she also led the development of the Building Strong Brains Tennessee Training for Trainers curriculum focused on brain development, ACEs, and strategies to foster resilience, which reached more than 80,000 people. Jennifer holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from Berry College, a master's degree in social work from the University of Tennessee, received endorsement as both an infant mental health mentor and early childhood mental health mentor in policy, and has expertise in infant and early childhood mental health, child development, child trauma, and child abuse prevention. So please join me in welcoming and enjoying this great presentation. So take it away.
Oh, Michelle, thank you so much. Every time somebody reads my bio, I'm like, I really need to cut that in half. It's just too much. The length of my title is half the problem, right? I just want to say we're very honored, Heather and I, to be here today to present on this topic to you all. It is a passion area for both Heather and I, and we came together and really enjoyed creating what you'll hear today. So if you enjoy it half as much as we enjoyed creating it, we'll consider that a win. I also like to just very quickly start out with why. Why are we talking about, secure-based leadership, and how does that relate to resilience? Well, we spend a lot of time at work, and the people that we interact with at work have a great impact on our mental health and our well-being and how we are in the rest of our lives. And so a key strategy in promoting resilience among families is promoting secure-based leadership among your workforce and in your organization. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Heather to get us started on the presentation.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you for setting that up and really sharing the why behind this. And thank you all so much for being here and for the Strong Brain Institute for sharing this space with us today. So let's dive in. In 2004, Gallup conducted a study with 13 million people in the workplace, and they found that the highest levels of engagement occurred when people felt that their immediate supervisors cared about them as individuals. In 2008, Google launched a multi-year study on the role of managers. And at first their study was to see if managers even matter. And spoiler alert, they did. And in fact, Google discovered 10 qualities of good managers, and that these good managers were key to outcomes like turnover, satisfaction, and performance of their employees over time. They didn't stop there. Google did another study to figure out what makes teams successful, and this was in 2012. And what they found was that it mattered less who was on the team and more about how the team worked together. And the most important thing was having something called psychological safety. In 2021, Pew Research Center conducted a study on the Great Resignation to find out why people were quitting their jobs. And one of the primary reasons was for feeling disrespected at work. And in addition to this, other reputable entities like Harvard Business, McKinsey & Company have published multiple articles over the years about effective leaders and high-performing teams. And they may have all used different language to describe what they found in their research and results, but the core idea in all of them really pointed back to one thing. People's experience, or how they felt from the environment created by their supervisor or leader, directly impacted their level of engagement, satisfaction, and well-being. And something about this sounded so familiar to me that I couldn't quite put my finger on it until I was doing an online research coach training series with Dan Siegel. I imagine many of you know him with his significant contributions in the field of infant and early childhood, and Daniel Goleman, known for his leadership and emotional intelligence. And they were saying very similar things to what I'd been reading in the research. And then they mentioned this term, secure base leadership. And it was this aha moment. And I was like, wait, I know something about secure bases. And then I realized something else. Google and other researchers have spent, I don't know, probably hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars, countless hours doing interviews and interpreting data to discover what those of us in this room have known all along. See, those of us in this room know the importance of secure bases, especially in the lives of infants and young children, where they have at least one primary person in their life that sees and values them for who they are, encourages their going out, their exploring, taking risks, and learning so they can grow, delighting in them, while also providing safety and support when they need it. And because now we have a better understanding of adverse childhood experiences and brain science, the earlier these relationships happen in a child's life, the better. So this is especially important for infants and young children. In other words, what we know about secure bases in early childhood is just as relevant in leadership and in the workplace, and all of the research was saying it loud and clear. So there's a lot that the field of infant and early childhood has to teach us about leadership. But before we dive into that, let's ground ourselves in a few ideas. Number one, when it comes to infants and young children, early intervention matters. Number two, the people in this room are doing transformative work that has a multi-generational impact. And number three, we are all leaders in this, no matter where we sit, because leadership is not about title or position. Leadership is about influence, and we all influence the people around us. So let's keep these things in mind as we're unpacking secure-based leadership and specifically what it means for child and family serving organizations. Now we're going to take just a few minutes to establish a shared language and understanding around the role of secure bases.
All right, we're going to start off by playing this short little video from Circle of Security that really grounds us in the science and the way in which we
when meeting our children's needs, helping them grow and giving them all that we can. We try to combine our own experience of being parented with the advice of others and our own instincts and beliefs about what is best. And still, we so often worry that we're not succeeding. In a world that is always offering the next best parenting solution, the circle of security is based on decades of attachment research. Unlike many behavioral perspectives, it offers relationship tools to provide a new way of understanding your children's needs, creating lasting security for them and more satisfaction for you. The circle graphic has been created to help you know what to look for, so you can read your children's behavior to guide you in meeting their needs. It's really not complicated. People of all ages have attachment needs. These needs can be divided in three ways. Let's look at this child. First, he needs to know the freedom and confidence to go out and explore his world. Second, he needs to feel assured that whenever he's ready, he can come back for comfort and protection. Third, he needs his caregiver to be in charge in a kind way. Three basic needs that can be thought of as going out on the circle, coming in on the circle, and hands on the circle. Let's have a look in more detail. Feeling safe and supported, our children want to discover their world. When going out, they need to know that their exploration is encouraged, that we're right there watching over them, delighting in them, offering help when needed, and ready to enjoy their new adventures with them. And when they're coming in, they need us to refill their emotional cup. This means organizing their emotions and letting them know we are delighted to welcome them back, protect, comfort, and understand them. The key for us as parents is to remain strong and kind while knowing when to encourage their going out into the world and how to be available to welcome them back to us. It's crucial that we learn to identify our children's needs like this, because misreading them, or worse, missing them altogether, can cause pain and frustration. We all know how uncomfortable it can be to be held too close when we want to be out exploring, or kept at a distance when you need emotional support, or simply to be without someone who is bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind, who we can trust to understand what we need when we're feeling lost, confused, or out of control. When a child misbehaves, the cause is often rooted in how safe and secure they're feeling. So it's not surprising that they behave well when a parent learns to tune into their child's needs on the circle in this way. And because our needs on the circle never disappear, learning to read cues can help you better understand and meet the needs of people of all ages, including your own. So that's all there is to it. Just know that at any given moment, your child is somewhere on the circle asking you to meet a need. Support by going out. Welcome by coming in. Be the hands that keep me safe by staying in charge and committed to helping me feel connected. And please remember this, there's no such thing as perfect parenting. At Circle of Security, we've come to realize that good enough is, well, good enough. All of us are going to miss needs on the circle time and again. Welcome to the club. But if we meet our children's needs enough of the time, the results will be happier, healthier, more secure children, and parents too. Parents.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Heather. And sorry, we're having a bit of a problem with the video playback, but hopefully you got the gist of where we were going with that. So I just want us to start off on the same page because we're going to be using an expanded definition of secure base to capture its relevance in life and even in the workforce. So as you can see on the screen, we are expanding this definition to say that a secure base is a person, place, goal, or object that provides a sense of protection, safety, and caring, and offers a source of inspiration and energy for daring, exploration, risk-taking, and seeking challenge. So this definition comes from the book Care to Dare, which greatly influenced this presentation that you're hearing today. So to put it in simple terms, or in other words, a secure base provides the safety, security, and comfort that enables exploration, otherwise known as stretch, and engagement and productive risk-taking. A secure base creates spaces that give someone else the opportunity to belong, to develop their true essence, and reach their unique potential. So because we've got some limited time here together, we're going to be focusing on the secure base as the leader in the organization, wherever they sit, but we won't be focusing on some of those other things that are in the definition. All right. So just as they said in the video, we continue to need secure bases as we grow. And here you can see a visual of how that plays out in adolescence, but it doesn't stop at adolescence. We continue to need these secure bases even in adulthood. So researchers over the years have continued to prove that attachment theorists were right. Attachment to a secure base continues to play a major role across the lifespan. And we'll caveat that much of the research was focused on emotionally intimate relationships, but they found some interesting things that I think that we could extrapolate for the purposes of our talk today. The first thing they found is when partners are dependable and make the other person in the relationship feel safe, the person can more effectively focus on other meaningful aspects of life outside the relationship, meaning they're not preoccupied with the health and well-being of the relationship, so they can move to more self-actualizing activities. They found that there's a biological dependability that happens. In fact, partners can regulate each other's physiological responses. So think things like heart rate and blood pressure, especially in times of stress. If you think about it, these kinds of secure bases not only enhance emotional well-being over time, but they also impact your long-term physical health, as we know through all the ACEs research that toxic stress is bad for us, but if we have those buffers to prevent stress from becoming toxic, it can help us be protected from the impacts of high stress. And because adults can think more abstractly, even when their partner wasn't physically close, knowledge that the other person is available to them emotionally and psychologically can temporarily replace the need for physical proximity and availability. And I want to take a pause here and just say, working from home, you might hear my dog snoring in the background. She's distracting me just a little bit. I'm trying to tune her out, but if you hear something, you're not going crazy. It is a big old dog over there living her best life. All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about remembering our secure bases or our angels. So we've established that there is this universal human need for a secure base that follows us throughout our lifetime. We know that having a secure base or a positive, nurturing primary caregiving relationship, it's essential to healthy development. But we also know that there are the influences of ghosts and angels on one's ability to be a secure base, that this is a key principle of infant and early childhood mental health. So let's break this down just a little bit. We know that sometimes a caregiver's own traumatic or adverse experiences, or otherwise known as ghosts, right, that kind of show up sometimes unknown and haunt us a bit, they make it difficult for caregivers to be a secure base for their child. Just as ghosts present challenges to a secure base, we have the flip side of that. We can draw upon those positive caregiving experiences or angels to help caregivers tap into their ability to provide that secure base and safe haven. So I'm going to hand it over to Heather, who is going to provide a wonderful visualization for us as we think about our own angels from our childhood or from our past.
Thanks, Jen. So we are going to pause here just for a minute or so and just quietly reflect together. So right where you are, you can keep your eyes open, you can close them, whatever feels most comfortable for you. And I'll invite you to start just by taking a couple of deep breaths. And while you're aware of your breathing, see if you can bring to mind a secure base or an angel in your own life. This may be from someone earlier in your life or someone in your life today. Maybe it's a parent or a caregiver. Could be a teacher, a coach, a friend, a therapist, a mentor. What do you remember about how they were with you? See if you can bring them to mind by picturing their face, a memory or an experience, or maybe even a feeling. And as you take your next breath, just soak that in for a moment. And as you open your eyes and make your way back to our shared space, we invite you to continue holding them in your mind as we move through this presentation. And if you feel so moved, we also would encourage you to pop something in the chat if you'd like to share that there.
Thanks, Heather. After our last presentation, no less than 4 people, am I right, Heather, came up to her and said, have you ever thought about doing guided meditation or reading sleep stories? And it was hilarious. We got a good giggle over that. So let's think a little bit about secure bases at work. We've really established the need for secure bases throughout our lifespan. But when you were thinking about your own secure base or angel, it's likely that family, friends, partners, mentors, coaches, teachers, those kinds of folks are the ones that came to mind. I want us to sit and think about how powerful it would be if one of the first people that came to our minds was someone at work, a supervisor or a colleague. Why don't we often think about having secure bases at work? This is the place where I know, even though I'm working remotely, I spend more time on Zoom with people I'm working with than I do my own family, right? And so if I could spend 45 hours a week with folks that I consider secure bases, how much of an impact would that have on my mental well-being? So if you are one of those people that did think about someone at work, we hope you're going to use that experience and become a thought leader and voice to support this way of being. And because you have a felt sense of what that's like, being that for others will be like second nature. But for those of us where someone at work wouldn't come to mind so easily, let's imagine together what it could be like. All right, so I want us to take a second and think, if I had a secure base at work, what would it look like? What would it feel like? What would it sound like? What would you notice happening? And feel free to pop those answers in the chat. As you're thinking about this or popping your answers in the chat, some examples we've had in the past are things like, I would notice people really caring about the impact of others, or I would feel safe enough to speak up in meetings. And there are lots of other examples that we can give. So you'll recognize this circle. It's one that influenced this design that you see before you that Heather and I put together. It is a combination of looking at those best leadership practices, as well as looking at the elements of secure-based leadership and explaining how this circle operates in adulthood in the workplace. So what you'll see here, and I have to expand my screen just a little bit because that's too teeny tiny for me to read, is that you'll see, thank you, Heather, you're awesome, is that you'll see that you've got the secure base, which is the leader right there. And while they have their brain and their strategy hat, they also have that caring, that high caring that is at the center of a lot of their decision making. What you see with the employee is that they need you to encourage and inspire them to problem solve, that they think creatively. If I'm the employee, I need you to empower me to take risks that help me reach my potential and feel engaged in helping the organization meet its mission. That is especially true in our line of work because we are missional people, and that's why we're here. We need you to recognize effort and achievement, delight in growth, coach me when I need it, and assume my best intentions. So you see that there's some going out on the circle here, some stretch that's happening, and us celebrating that stretch. However, as we're growing, there are times where we need to come back to that safe space. And in those instances, we need the supervisor to help us feel safe when we've made a mistake, right? Welcome, them welcoming, coming, I'm messing up all my things. Welcome my coming to you. So I'll just pretend like I'm the person. Welcome my coming to you when I've made the mistake or when I'm feeling uncertain or when I'm feeling a little scared or embarrassed. And then encourage that reflection and help me problem solve and or course correct when I've made a mistake. Right? And so over time, we're going to learn from those things. When we know we can come back to our leader and we can process and learn and be coached, then we can go farther and farther out, do more and more risk taking and stretch and really realize our potential. So with that being said, I'm going to minimize this again so that I can see my notes. All right. So, we want to think about the conditions that a secure base is creating in the environment that makes this possible. So I want us to think about reasonable risks. We're not just saying like haphazard risk taking. We are thinking about those risks that are going to advance the mission of the work or that is allowing the worker to stretch and grow. And there are lots of other things that leaders do to develop, support, and guide their team toward the overall mission, which we'll get to later. But we need to think about what the conditions are. What's happening in that environment that we just looked at that makes all of that possible? All right, so I'm going to hand it off to Heather to think through that with you guys.
Thanks, Jen. So Amy Edmondson, a professor of leadership and management at Harvard Business School, got curious about this very thing too. And in her famous TED Talk, she describes two types of work environments, teams where people felt like they could and were even expected to speak up, offer ideas, and share their mistakes. And then there were other places where people didn't speak up. They didn't share their ideas and they certainly didn't admit their mistakes. So in her curiosity, she joined a team of physicians and nurses doing research to determine the actual rate of human-related medication errors in hospitals. And her role was really asking the question, do better care teams make fewer mistakes? So she collected all the data on the teams, on the errors, and to her surprise, the results revealed the opposite of what she expected. It appeared as though better teams weren't making more mistakes. They were making more mistakes, not fewer. And in her continued curiosity, she then hypothesized, well, maybe better teams aren't making more mistakes. Maybe they're just willing to discuss them. And she wondered, what if better teams have a climate of openness that allows them to report their mistakes and get to the bottom for learning? So she followed up with having another researcher study these hospital units, someone who didn't know anything about the results or anything about her hypothesis. And long story short, her hypothesis turned out to be right. And she later came to describe that what these teams had was something called psychological safety. And she defines psychological safety as a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes, and that the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. And I'll add, she also made it really clear it is not about dialing back on excellence or not holding people accountable. It's not a trade-off. You actually need both. And she made that really clear in her talk. So that's the combination of safety and stretch that you can begin to see or imagine in this visual that Jen walked us through a moment ago. And so how we show up and interact with those, with others, and how others interact with us is profoundly impacted by the conditions of our environment, especially how psychologically safe we feel. So we're going to watch another little video. I'm going to play with my sound settings just a minute to see if I can reduce the feedback. 1 second here. All right.
I'll tell you a true story. A few months ago, I stayed at the Four Seasons in Las Vegas. It is a wonderful hotel. And the reason it's a wonderful hotel is not because of the fancy beds. Any hotel can go and buy a fancy bed. The reason it's a wonderful hotel is because of the people who work there. If you walk past somebody at the Four Seasons and they say hello to you, you get the feeling that they actually wanted to say hello to you. It's not that somebody told them that you have to say hello to all the customers, say hello to all the guests, right? You actually feel that they care. Now, in their lobby, they have a coffee stand. And one afternoon, I went to buy a cup of coffee, and there was a barista by the name of Noah who was serving me. Noah was fantastic. He was friendly and fun, and he was engaging with me. And I had so much fun buying a cup of coffee, I actually think I gave 100% tip, right? He was wonderful. So as is my nature, I asked Noah, do you like your job? And without skipping a beat, Noah says, I love my job. And so I followed up. I said, what is it that the Four Seasons is doing that would make you say to me, I love my job? And without skipping a beat, Noah said, throughout the day, managers will walk past me and ask me how I'm doing, if there's anything that I need to do my job better. He said, not just my manager, any manager. And then he said something magical. He says, I also work at Caesar's Palace. And at Caesar's Palace, the managers are trying to make sure we're doing everything right. They catch us when we do things wrong. He says, when I go to work there, I like to keep my head under the radar and just get through the day so I can get my paycheck. He says, here at the Four Seasons, I feel I can be myself. Same person, entirely different experience from the customer who will engage with Noah. So we in leadership are always criticizing the people. We're always saying, we got to get the right people on the bus. I've got to fill my team. I got to get the right people. But the reality is, it's not the people. It's the leadership. If we create the right environment, we will get people like Noah at the Four Seasons. If we create the wrong environment, we will get people like Noah at Caesar's Palace.
All right, can you hear me okay? Yes, all right, thank you. Thanks for your patience with that. So I don't know about you, but I could relate to Noah's experience. And unlike Noah, those of us in this room are not making coffee. Not that there's anything wrong with making coffee. The work that we're doing is changing the lives of children and families. And so when we don't feel psychologically safe at work, we don't speak up, we don't create, we don't innovate, and we don't collaborate to find solutions to complex problems in our systems. And our teams and our organizations miss out on opportunities to learn and grow, which ultimately means that our children and our families don't get the best care or resources that they deserve.
I'll tell you.
And this isn't just anecdotal. There's brain science that demonstrates this. And neuroscientists have found through functional magnetic resonance imaging, or MRIs, that social pain and physical pain produce the same brain responses. So feeling betrayed or unrecognized at work is like experiencing physical pain being inflicted on the body. So when you think back to that Pew Research earlier, it's no wonder that people were quitting their jobs. And when our brain perceives danger, the threat response is activated. And our focus is really then on safety, protection, and survival. And then what happens is the parts of our brain that are needed for analytical thinking, problem solving, and creativity and innovation, they go offline. They're really hard to access. And so like Noah, we stop speaking up, we keep our heads down just to kind of get through. But there's also good news. And the good news is that the opposite can happen. And because we now know about neuroplasticity and the role of mirror neurons, experiences with secure bases at any time in our lives can actually rewire our brain and move us toward more curiosity, compassion, and openness towards ourselves and others. For example, just by being in the presence of someone who's calm, we're more likely to become calm. It's like they're this regulated presence. So when you think about that, think about the impact that we can have on the lives of those we influence just by knowing that. So how do we, as leaders, create these kinds of environments where people feel and experience this safety and stretch? And like Simon Sinek said, it starts with leaders. So let's take a closer look at what it means to be a secure-based leader. So psychologist and hostage negotiator George Kohlreiser and his colleagues are the ones who coined the term secure-based leadership. And in their book, Care to Dare, they describe a two-part research study where they found a positive relationship between characteristics of secure-based leadership and outcome variables like leadership effectiveness, job satisfaction, and psychological safety. Again, very similar to the research that we shared earlier. One key difference, though, is that George Kohlreiser and his colleagues really pulled from attachment theory. And it's also important to note that they were not focused on child and family serving agencies. This was actually a global study that was across various industries. So let's take a closer look at these 9 characteristics. One of the words used most frequently in the research interviews to describe a secure-based leader was calm. Secure-based leaders, they're just able to keep the big picture in mind while remaining composed and dependable, especially under pressure and stress. And it's like they have this regulated presence about them where other people think things are going to be okay, even in times of uncertainty. Secure-based leaders have what Carl Rogers called unconditional positive regard for people. They value the whole person for who they are, not just what they do. And when there's an issue, they're really able to separate the person from the problem. And secure-based leaders really focus on bonding. They show a genuine interest in getting to know people, asking about big and small events in their life, knowing the names of their kids. Secure-based leaders also they have this eye for seeing potential talent, not just current abilities, even when people may not see it in themselves. They pay attention and they notice that sparkle in someone's eye or the inflection in their voice when they talk about something they're excited or passionate about. They ask people about their hopes and dreams for their careers, and they invest in unleashing people's potential by leveraging their unique strengths, what comes natural to them. Secure-based leaders prefer listening and inquiry, asking curious questions rather than always telling people what to do or how to do it. They ask open-ended questions and engage in a dialogue that Kohlreiser describes as seeking the greater truth, recognizing that in the conversation is where that truth really lives. And they listen to understand rather than respond, and they don't assume that they know answers. They pause, they slow down, they allow silence to leave space for people's voices other than their own. Secure-based leaders deliver a powerful message that's direct, it's clear, and it's succinct to the point without a lot of rambling. And they have the ability to get to the point, saying the right thing at just the right time. And you may have had that experience before where someone says something to you and it just clicks. And they're genuine and intentional with their words. And it feels that way when you hear them. They intentionally look for opportunities to encourage, to celebrate, inspire through powerful verbal or even written messages. Secure-based leaders focus on the positive. You know, our brains naturally focus on the negative to assess risk and ensure survival. But secure-based leaders are really good at holding space for people's emotions while helping them focus their attention on the positive or opportunity, the hope or the possibility, rather than the negative, even when things are difficult. Secure-based leaders encourage risk-taking, and kind of like Jen said, it's reasonable risk-taking, and they provide these tangible opportunities for people to take risks that unleash their potential, like through stretch assignments. They support autonomy, they don't micromanage, and they embrace what's called a growth mindset because they recognize that failure is normal and it's an expected part of learning and development. Secure-based leaders inspire through intrinsic motivation. George Kohlreiser and his colleagues found that financial rewards were really not as powerful as people reaching their potential, learning, developing, and being a part of something meaningful. Secure-based leaders care about what people value or what matters to them, and they take the time to ask. Secure-based leaders also invite people to be a part of the mission in ways that matter both to the individual and benefits the organization. It's really this win-win. Secure-based leaders also signal accessibility. They're consistently available to people when they have questions. But that doesn't mean they're available 24/7, but you can count on them to respond in a reasonable amount of time while still setting boundaries that support work-life integration. Secure-based leaders they're just this powerful psychological presence of a secure base who plays a role even when they're not physically there. And it's like people develop this, what we call this internal working model. It's sort of like they're channeling that person, what they might do or what they might think in that moment. So in other words, people feel supported by a secure-based leader even when they're not physically there. I'll turn it over to Jen.
So easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? Like that's all we have to do. We just have to follow all of those bullet points to be a secure-based leader. I like to remind folks at this juncture in the presentation that we have to grow too. You know, leaders in an organization, we're not going to get it right all the time. I want us to go back to that video where it says, you know, there's no perfect parent. There's also no perfect leader. And there are certainly areas on that list where I have to work. One of them is listening and inquiry. Another one is, you know, assuming best intentions when I'm feeling really stressed out, to take a breath and get regulated so I can do that. But there are lots of things that are going on that can really inhibit our ability to realize these different attributes. So let's dig a little bit deeper. So what keeps us from becoming secure-based leaders at work? Well, we are whole people, and the roots of our leadership are tangled in our personal story. Again, this goes right back to adverse childhood experiences study and our understanding of trauma. Oftentimes, what gets in the way is a lack of awareness of our own ghosts or history of traumas and adversity. And without that awareness, these ghosts continue to drive how we show up. Patterns get created, and it becomes how it is. And that's how injustices, inequities, and traumas continue to exist. So if we know this, what is going to get in the way? We're going to list some of the things that bring us into this place or bring up our ghosts that keep us from really being our most calm, secure-based leader selves. This is not an exhaustive list, though, so just know that there's a lot more that we could list here. So we fear bringing our whole selves to work, and we keep our angels at the door, especially if there's a lack of psychological safety from above. So we try to keep our work and life separate. Now, work-life balance is good, but believing that what happens at work won't affect us at home and vice versa is just unrealistic. There's a fear of being perceived as too nice or being taken advantage of. It's like, well, if I assume the best intentions of folks all the time, then I'm going to be taken advantage of. And like Heather said earlier, that doesn't mean that we don't hold people accountable. There's fear of losing respect. There's those past workplace traumas or ghosts that we faced as we professionally grow up. There is a fear that tough conversations that need to be had won't be able to happen if you care too much. So left unaware, these barriers can create painful ruptures if you don't have that intentional repair. And just as there are no perfect parents, there are no perfect leaders. And everybody is going to make mistakes from time to time. So I've said that twice now, and I want you all to hear it. When we make a mistake, it's okay. To continue the parallel, we just want us to think about how powerful it is when we as a parent maybe mess up. I think about myself, and I usually do not raise my voice at my child. But when I do raise my voice at my child, first of all, she will say to me very quickly, "You are not allowed to speak to me in that tone." Right? Which I'm like, oh, I'm such a good parent, right? But secondly, I might take a break and I might come back and say, you know what, you're right, that was inappropriate. And I could have handled my big feelings in a different way. Well, if we think about leadership, when we see those apologies, when we see somebody who loses their cool come back and be able to sort of own up to that mistake or that trip up, it's very powerful for us as employees, right? We are able to then own our own mistakes, as Heather was talking about with the psychological safety. We're able to have somebody modeling for us what it looks like to be able to come back and repair and grow and do better next time. So ultimately, it's creating a safe space of safety, humanity, and dialogue. So just like we talked about our angels, and we thought about what it looked, felt, and sounded like if we had a secure base at work, let's think about what workplace ghosts may look, sound, and feel like. Maybe things like inequitable policies, passive aggressive communication or poor communication, lack of employee autonomy, micromanaging like Noah experienced, or feeling activated and defensive a lot of the time. So we want to reflect on other ways in which ghosts can show up at work And we want to hold in mind those angels, like where are those bright spots where we can improve the situation? And most importantly, we always want to ask ourselves, where am I in this story? Because self-reflection is a key piece of that secure-based leadership.
Thanks, Jen. And, we know that there are a lot of variables that impact organizational health and success. And secure-based leadership is only one of them. And like Jen said, there are things that can get in the way of us really showing up and being the secure-based leader that we want to be. So the journey to becoming a secure-based leader, it's not about checking boxes. It is really this art of being and doing, knowing sort of which ones to apply where. And here's the thing, it is not about doing it perfectly all the time. And I can tell you from my own experience, I have made a lot of mistakes and wasn't always being the secure-based leader that people needed me to be. So it is a journey. And so as we move into talking about steps that you can begin taking on this journey, I want to invite you into this space of self-reflection and inquiry. So think about, it's like flipping the camera around on your phone to self-view and focusing on you. So let's start with awareness. Awareness is really about coming from a place of curiosity rather than judgment. And this is maybe beginning to ask yourself or wondering things like, how well am I creating spaces of safety and stretch? How am I showing up and engaging with the people around me? How often do I listen more than I talk? And you can invite the perspectives of those around you, and that can be done through 360 evaluations, surveys, conversations. And through this reflective practice, it's likely that we may become aware of some things that we weren't before. And like Jen was saying earlier, we're a whole person, and the roots of our leadership are tangled in our personal story. So just as we develop in relationships, reflecting in relationship with a secure base can help hold the space on our journey. And this can look a lot of ways. For me, in times of leadership, I've had therapists, I've had a coach. So, with that in mind, it really is important to identify your secure bases. And maybe it's the person that came to mind for you during the reflection activity, or someone else. And it may not be someone at work, but identify who they are, stay connected with them, carry them with you into your work, and invite them on this journey with you. The next one's attunement, or tune in. This is about focusing your attention and being present in the moment with yourself and others. Maybe you think about it prior to the reflection activity we did earlier. When was the last time you just noticed your breathing? We're so busy, and we're often thinking about what just happened, what's going to happen next. And remember back from the circle of security, it's about being present and tuning in so you can read the cues of others in the moment. And this will help you know which secure-based leadership characteristic to use when. And this is hard to do. And one of the things I will encourage people with, and even use in my own coaching practice, is to introduce some mindful awareness practices to begin that slowing down that can be so hard to do sometimes, but increasing that awareness about how to tune in. And the third thing here is acceptance. And this is about accepting where you are right now and becoming a secure-based leader, and accepting where others are too. Because like Jen said, you'll make mistakes and so will they. We're all going to make mistakes on this journey. There are going to be ruptures that need repair. And you might say, well, Jen, Heather, I'm not good at staying calm under stress. And I would invite you to add one word to the end of that sentence: yet. I'm not good at staying calm under stress yet. And just by adding that one word, you've shifted now into a growth mindset. And embracing that growth mindset means you're accepting where you are or what is, and you're also having and holding hope for what could be. I'll give you this example. I cannot take credit for it, but this is a way of embracing that growth mindset that you can even start using tomorrow. There was an organization, a team within an organization that decided to adopt something called the Angel's Advocate. And most of us are probably familiar with the devil's advocate, where someone will offer an idea, a suggestion, and immediately it's that won't work. We've tried that before. Here's why it won't work. And so it sort of shuts down that idea. And so what this team said was, we're going to use something called the Angel's Advocate. So anytime someone offers a thought, a suggestion, an idea, the first thing out of anyone's mouth would be that of an Angel's Advocate. It's the yes and. It's here's what I like about what you said, or what you said made me think of. So if you can think about how that might play out, where everyone's voice is needed and invited, one person's idea could change the course of the conversation in an incredible way. But you might have never gotten there if that had been shut down early on. So, as we move to a close, let's take just a few minutes to wonder together about the ripple effect of creating these kinds of spaces where people feel both safety and stretch. What would happen if this leader sitting in the C-suite creates this kind of space for the supervisor or this team, and then they create it for the provider or the parent, and then that provider or parent creates that space for a child or a group of children? Think about the exponential impact, not just the ripples down, but also the ripples out. Consider what it would feel like for you, wherever you sit, to be able to be your authentic self at work, to feel a sense of belonging, to be seen and heard and valued for who you are, not just for what you do. You're reaching your potential, you're more engaged, you're productive, you're inspired. Imagine the ripples out in the rest of your life. How would you be with your partner? How would you be with your family, with your kids? What about your friends? How would you be with them? And why does this matter so much in child and family serving agencies? Well, just like there's no such thing as a perfect parent, like Jen said, there is no such thing as being a perfect leader. Good enough is, well, it's good enough. And if we can get this right, or at least be good enough secure-based leaders, we can create the conditions that unlock each person's potential at work. We can tap into their unique talents, their creative ideas, and their innovative solutions. And that's exactly what we need right now to bring about the changes in our systems to better serve and support our children and families. Because here's the thing, one day, that child is going to be sitting in one of our seats, or making funding decisions, or writing legislation. How do we want them to be? It starts with us today, from exactly where we sit. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Heather and Jen, for your great talk. It was exactly what we were hoping for, and inspiring folks as they carry on with their resilience and trauma-informed work. I know we're almost up to the time. If I haven't seen any questions in the chat, but we really appreciate everyone coming. We'll be sending out an evaluation for y'all, and the resilience series is continuing on Monday. So watch your emails for our next talk. That's right before Thanksgiving. So thank you again, Heather and Jen, for joining us today. And we look forward to taking these concepts forward in our work.